not just the consumer that needs to make educated choices. The production companies need to make educated choices and need to be aware that those choices collectively, globally, have a massive impact. Neo-Chromato has the potential to de-ink already produced polyester textiles so that they can be reused over and over again.
Hi, I'm Marc Verbeem and welcome to this podcast live from the Drupa. I'm here with Rod Harrison from Mimaki Global Department, and we're going to tell you all about the sustainability in the textile industry. Rod, is there anything you can share?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Textile industry is obviously something that's very important to everyone in the world, right? I mean, we all have to wear clothes.
Yeah.
But how those clothes are manufactured, is important. It's becoming more important because consumers in general are becoming more aware of the environmental impact of their behaviors, purchasing behaviors, the impact of manufacturing. So, it's a big thing for Mimaki. We're very much, focused on how to impact the industry in a positive way and make it more sustainable for everybody.
If you look at the industry right now, what is still the main technology in this world?
Well, the textile industry is pretty large. The majority of textiles are still produced analog, meaning with screen printing, whether that's flatbed or rotary screen printing. Today, about 8% of the total is produced digitally, but that's expected to grow to about 20% by 2030.
That's quite amazing, because if you look at Drupa and you look at all those digital technologies, you would assume that this industry is like digitally all the way.
Yeah, right. And it is trending in that direction, which is a good thing, because every 1% of shift from analog to digital has a major impact on the environment in terms of huge amounts of water consumption saving and a much lower contribution of CO2 emissions. But the other thing that's really important is the aspect of recycling.
Yeah.
Because even though that shift from analog to digital benefits the world, the total volume increase still has a negative impact because a large proportion of what's produced today ends up as landfill.
Yeah. There is basically no recycling on textile.
There's not none, but that's, it's kind of like we're lucky if it's 1%. And over 60% of what's produced is actually, synthetic fibers.
Yeah.
So it's really important that the recycling plays a much bigger part. And that's starting to happen. There's a couple of companies in the US, and there's one in Australia that are just going commercial scale.
Yeah.
And they're working on technologies, and they're perfecting them actually, that allows them to separate multi-fiber fabrics into their separate components.
Okay.
And then recycle those into new products in different industry verticals, not necessarily back into clothing. They're used for all sorts of other byproducts.
We know that people are reusing. That's basically, we think about recycling, but people are reusing, the vintage brands and things like that. People are wearing more and more vintage clothes or giving it a reuse, sell it online, things like that. So that is, of course, a trend that we also see. And we also, what I've seen and read is that, the way that recycled polyester is not really from clothes.
No, unfortunately, there's very little fiber-to-fiber recycling going on. The bulk of it in the polyester space, which dominates fashion fabrics, is actually coming from, recycled water bottles being turned into feeder stocks to produce new fibers. The fiber-to-fiber recycling is really at very, very early stage.
And I think it's also difficult when you have all those different kind of fibers, you have different kind of technologies, different kind of inks into the fabrics. That's probably very difficult to separate and get them out of the fabric.
And that's been the biggest technology challenge. Those companies that are actually engaged in recycling have started to perfect those processes, but they're not, I would say, yet at full industrial scale. Yeah. They're getting there, and it will happen more and more in the next 5 to 10 years.
If you look at Mimaki, if we are showing some technologies on always like on Vespas and Drupas.
Yep.
I heard the buzzword about Neo-Chromato. Is that something that you can tell something about?
Well, yeah. Look, Neo-Chromato is a technology. One of a couple of technologies Mimaki's working on. Neo-Chromato has the potential to de-ink already produced polyester textiles, so that they can be reused over and over again.
So you're taking the ink out of the
fabric, and it lends itself very well to flat sheets, so display graphics rather than say finished garments.
Yeah.
But as we continue to develop the technology, the hope is that in the next couple of years we'll have something going to commercial scale that will allow that polyester to actually be repurposed, upcycled, in some cases reused. So it's a key initiative for us, but again, it's an underdevelopment technology.
But if you think about it, it basically could potentially end up that the Zara's and the H&M for nowadays have a stock of their red polyester, which is not selling very well. They could actually de-ink it and tweak it into another color.
Yeah,
and print another color.
And look, just to be straightforward about it, when we looked at the industry, and we continue to do it, we anticipated that there would be a lot of feeder stocks that were already printed. But what we found was that the inventory, the work in progress inventory, is actually in the form of paper. So the industry pre-prints the paper in anticipation of orders coming in for a particular design, but they don't go to textiles. They don't do the sublimation transfer process until those actual orders are in hand. But there are some segments, particularly in footwear, where a lot more textile is pre-printed because it has to be, because of the huge volumes of production. So there are opportunities to repurpose that material and reuse it.
So it's still a technology that is, at an entry level.
It's under development.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess we're one of the few companies that actually is working on that kind of technology.
Yeah, we have quite a lot of people here at Drupal also being amazed about the technology if we actually show it live.
It is pretty cool. And again, if we can get it to industrial scale in the next couple of years, then it'll start to have an impact. And that's encouraging because the European community leads the way in developing regulations.
Yeah.
And in some countries in Europe in the next couple of years, it's going to be the responsibility of the fashion houses to actually collect and recycle the industrial waste.
Yeah.
That's a complex process to put in place, but it all starts with regulation.
Yeah. We know. We've seen that, especially in Europe, the rules and regulations are getting tighter and tighter, and sooner or later, inks will be banned. If we look at acid ink, reactive ink, there will be rules and regulations on the usage of these things. Now, if we look further on technology, if we look at, looking the sustainability in textile, is there anything else that Mimaki is looking at or have developed over the last time?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think Mimaki and a bunch of other companies have played a major role in, that more sustainable shift to digital, which is a good thing. But that's all synthetic fiber production.
Okay.
Natural fibers has been something that's been a tough nut to crack. Yes. Because it requires pre-treatment and all sorts of other things that again have an impact on the environment.
Yeah.
The TRAPIS technology that we've brought out, which again is just beginning, it's on the beginning of its life cycle, has huge potential to grow, but we've just introduced it at FESPA and again here at Drupa. And that allows, through a collaboration with 3 different companies, including Mimaki, the ability to actually print on natural fibers in a similar kind of way that the dye subtransfer on polyester is done. And that has some really interesting impacts because what it does is it allows brands to potentially, have small scale production, which doesn't require a massively high skill level.
Yeah.
It's as easy as dye sub printing is today.
So a learning curve for new people in the business.
Small learning curve,
okay.
Low barrier to investment in terms of capital, and that has a huge impact potentially because in a distributed production model as opposed to centralized production, you take a lot of the the environmental impact out of the supply chain. You're not moving things around the world. The raw materials are already distributed.
Yeah.
So if the production could be distributed to be closer to endpoint in the market, that has a knock-on effect, which is beneficial.
I can understand that, because a lot of people in this business, they always have the pre-coating, the washing, the steaming, everything that is involved. That is also using quite a lot of water. The whole sustainability effect of that one is really gone with that, because the water consumption is high. I understand from TRAPIS that is almost waterless or limited.
It's very similar to dye-sub in terms of, it's probably 95% less water consumption than traditional screen printing.
Okay.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But, generally the knock-on effect of moving to digital is great. It's the recycling piece that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And, I think because that's at an embryonic stage globally, that's where the major impact will come.
I think water is, of course, for everybody, a source that is getting vulnerable on our Earth. We see a lot of technologies, also in our world of the printing, where we see ink technologies that are still using a lot of water in their cartridges. Is Mimaki, looking at that kind of technology?
Look, all of the technologies that we bring to market have a goal of being as waterless as possible.
As sustainable as possible, basically. And
use as little amount of energy as possible in the production process, because those are the two things we can impact.
Yes.
65% of the world's power is still produced with fossil fuels. And if you look at the countries that are fossil fuel generators of power, and you overlay that with the centers of gravity where textile production is, it's not a good picture.
No.
So the world needs to move more and more towards sustainable energy production, and the production processes themselves need to continue on the path they're on, which is going to less use of water and less use of power.
I think a lot of people would think, sustainability is really like the buzzword and things like that. But the way that you describe it, it actually means that we have to take action. Not only the manufacturers, but all the people in our industry, they have to look closely. What can we do?
The most important thing we can do as an industry player is educate our consumers, educate our customers. And so we do a lot of information sharing with customers about power consumption, water consumption, and all of that, so that they can make informed decisions. Because you're right, it's not just the consumer that needs to make educated choices. The production companies need to make educated choices and need to be aware that those choices collectively, globally, have a massive impact.
Yeah.
The textile industry is contributing about 20% of total industrial water pollution today.
Yeah.
So every time we can move that needle a little bit more in that sustainable direction, the better it is to the world, because total water stress, that which is, the amount of water taken out of the environment versus what's actually going in through the natural cycles of weather, is increasing. The impact of temperature change, creating much more global water stress. Water is life.
Yeah.
So the more we can save water, the better.
Well, Rod, thank you very much for this clear explanation of the textile industry and where Mimaki is heading with their technology.
Very welcome.
If you want to know more about our podcast, please visit our website or look at our social medias.